Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Community Office Hours here at Moderne, where we go over everything that's new with OpenRewrite in the past week, and we dive in depth into one particular topic. The topic for today is going to be on Refaster style recipes combined with Picnic's ErrorProne support. And for that, I'm going to bring in a good friend of mine later on after I take you through what's new in this week. So first up, let's have a look at the newsletter that we have sent out. So if you aren't yet subscribed to our newsletter, we have one that we send out every month where you can get your discount codes. If you want to go to DevNexus, you can see everything that's been new and interesting in a more digested form and that you can read whenever it's convenient for you. And we send this out both via email, but you can also subscribe on LinkedIn, where you get the same content delivered in a slightly different format, just so you can keep up to date on everything that has been going on here. So you'll find an overview of some podcasts that we've been on, or these community office hours, and videos like our Java 21 migration, which you can watch all on your preferred platform. So have a look at that and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. Beyond that, we also have a new video featuring the IntelliJ IDE integration that I showed you last week. And there's just yet another way to watch all that is coming up in the next release of IntelliJ IDE. So if you haven't yet, have a look at that one. It's a really neat overview of what you can do with that integration that's coming up, I think, at the end of this month. Beyond that, we also have some changes in our recipe catalog, as always. We added some 86 new recipes this morning in a synchronous release of both ErrorProne support, which Rick will tell you all about, and our release of the rewrite third-party recipes, such that you can now run all these recipes just through the Moderne platform as is convenient for you. And you can also just see what changes they make. And like I said, we're going to go into this in more depth in a couple of minutes. We also now link to the source. So if you want to have a look at how they have documented these exact same rules with a bit more of a before and after situation, then that is convenient to have a look at as well, because it gives a really nice quick overview of what changes you could expect when running these recipes. So if you haven't yet, go and look at the marketplace and then the ErrorProne Refaster rules. Pretty neat stuff. Apart from that, we've also had a slight reshuffling of some recipes. We had recipes for various Apache projects spread across different modules in OpenRewrite, which we've now grouped together into a module specific for Apache projects. So if you want to do something for Maven shared, you can find that now in that Apache grouping. If you want to do something for Apache Commons, like Commons Lang, or Commons IO, or Commons Codec, you can all get those with downloading just the Rewrite Apache module. Same for HTTP client migrations, all of that grouped neatly together in this one module. And we had these recipes previously, but now it's just a lot easier to go find in this way. And so then next up, we also have a new module, which is for the struts framework migration. If you are a very seasoned programmer, I know I started with struts some 15 years ago, then you might know struts as that framework that has been around for a while, but that you might want to modernize if you haven't already. And even if you're not a struts programmer, you might know struts from some of the vulnerability issues that it's had over the years, where you really want to maybe remind your credit card company to actually upgrade their frameworks when they can. And we've developed some recipes to make this easier for them. And we also added the ability to upgrade JSP files. So if you have any JSP files, you can now parse them with our XML parser and manipulate the directives that we have that as well. So really good if you're still on that version of struts and you want to move to 6.0. And this is being expanded in a collaboration with a customer of ours. really neat stuff. And next up, today there's been a release of Apache Wicked 10. Wicked is another one of those web frameworks that's been around for a long time. It's very proven technology over a server-side rendered web application that you can now help migrate from the first moment that it's been released through OpenRewrite recipes and the Moderne platform. So we have some recipes readily available here, some of which leverage the recipes that we have developed for other use cases. So they've raised the minimum version that you need to Java 17. So as part of the migration to Wicked 10, we now run all those Java 17 migration recipes. The same for the migration to Jakarta EE and some updates to its various new dependencies that you need and some renamed classes. All of that just handily composed through our recipe builder, contributed to Apache Wicked, such that from the first moment that there is a release, you can actually start migrating. So have a look at that if you want to upgrade to that new version, because it's just, you shouldn't have to do that by hand anymore. Pretty neat, pretty cool. And then lastly, in the theme of new recipes that we have added, we now have some recipes specific for Node.js. So where I showed you 2 pages of older frameworks for struts and Wicked. If you are on newer Node.js applications, you might also want to upgrade those. And we have some recipes specific to help you there. There is a recipe if you want to upgrade specific dependencies, which is a typical building block that we can that you can then use in further declarative recipes, where you just give it some parameters, such in this case, the Apollo project and a version number. And now you can run this recipe at scale across your entire organization to make it such that all of them are adopting this as one step in their migration. And we'll be adding more and more use cases to this. And we also have a recipe which is able to visualize any dependencies that there are in your application. And let me quickly see if I have an example ready here from our open source repositories. Let me check this one, and then the activity view. Now we're going to see that I think this one worked this afternoon. Let's check if it still does. Here you can see the various versions that are in use of, in this case, TypeScript and TypeScript plugins, CSS modules, and all the way down a few other TypeScript modules that are in use. And you can see the various versions that are being used. Now, ideally, like you can see here for TypeScript, you have a very thin line that is only thick at the top, showing you that most of the projects are on those later versions. But sometimes you see that it becomes a bit of a worm where you need to really put some effort to bring all of these up to that latest version. So we've had it described as a thin jellyfish, which should be heavy on the top with just a small stream coming down. That's your ideal visualization for these types of recipes. And we can run this for any argument. In this case, we've ran it for specifically some TypeScript modules. But you can now analyze that at scale and then plan your next move after you've seen exactly how this, what you're using and what you maybe want to be using next. So have a look at all of this. It's all available through the common platform channels that you know. And for that, we're now going to switch to the main topic of today. And for that, I'm going to introduce you to some slight technical difficulties again. So when I switch tabs, somehow I'm getting dropped. But like I said, here's a good friend of mine, Rick Oosterdrijf.
Hello, everyone.
Glad that you wanted to join us for this evening. And
Yes.
we're going to, of course, we know each other well. We I think first met at the DevFolks Belgium 2 years ago.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah. Where we each had a presentation on a similar theme, helping folks to modernize their applications. But we each chose a different technology stack to achieve that. So in your case, ErrorProne support was a result of that, and in my case, it's OpenRewrite.
Yeah,
and now
I think back then we wanted to just have a chat on how you approach some issues and how we do it, and yeah, there it started, I would say.
Yeah, and then over the years we've seen each other often, and sometimes you get questions like, "What about that other framework?" And then I have to defer to you, and are they competing with you? No, we're actually friends. We see each other at conferences all the time, and then
Exactly.
it's nice to now be able to share that story and look at what we want to.
It's a really common question.
Build over you. So I'm going to share your slides so you can take us through a bit of what you've built up at Picnic. And,
yeah, sounds good.
With that, take it away. Cheers.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I will first start a bit with introducing at what company I work and how we approach certain things, and then we will quickly go towards automation, like automation tools, and maybe even our collaboration of ErrorProne support and the Moderne platform. So without further ado. I work at an online supermarket called Picnic. It's based in the Netherlands, and the cool thing is we are an online supermarket, which means that we have no physical stores that customers can go to, so they only have our app, and they only see the app and the person that does the actual delivery at their home. But in order to achieve all of this, we have a lot of code. We develop all our software in-house, and for that, we are really focused on high code quality and automation. And I'm going to explain you how we actually try to achieve that. So we have a tech team of around 300 engineers, of which there are 150 Java engineers. We have around 35 teams, of which there are 28 Java teams, and in total we have about 5 million lines of code, of which over 3 million lines of code is actual Java code. I'm a software engineer in the Java platform team at Picnic, and we have an interesting setup that has a few specific goals. Because we, as a company, want to become the online supermarket of Europe, we need to be able to adapt quickly to the market. We need to introduce new features, be very flexible, extend to new countries, for example. So we really want to make sure that we can actually adapt to that quickly and write a lot of new business logic. So we have an interesting setup in our company because we introduced a Java platform team that is responsible for helping our developers such that they don't need to focus on repetitive and boring tasks like implementing metrics, monitoring, and logging in their applications, but that they can actually focus on writing business logic. So that is our goal. We want, as a Java platform team, we want to boost developer effectiveness. And for that, we have a few specific goals. So we want to have minimal overhead, such that all different teams don't need to focus on the things I just mentioned, like monitoring and metrics, as they can focus on writing business logic. But still, in every team is working in a specific domain, and that requires a lot of domain knowledge. So they still need to be able to make decisions on which database to use, or other decisions. So the idea is that as a Java platform team, we provide a lot of modules to the teams that they can simply stack some modules on top of each other, and they can start writing their application on top of that.
That's a really common theme that we see with customers of ours as well, where they just really need to have a team that helps these teams be more effective, and it also makes it that not out of your 150 developers, 150 of them have to be experts in every library and every framework that you have, just because they need some metrics or they need some logging or they need something like that.
Instead of every team trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to logging, for example, we provide the perfect wheel that can be reused by all different teams, so that they don't need to think about the best practices, and that it is consistent how we do this across the whole company.
Yeah, very neat.
And yeah, the idea is that the platform is really is focused on openness, because the teams still need to be able to make decisions on how to build their application. So the question is, how do we structure that within Picnic? Well, we have one repository called the Picnic Java support modules, and this is a fairly large repository where we have all these different modules that the developers can use. But on top of that, we also provide a lot of configuration. We internally use Maven, and the idea is that we have a lot of Maven configuration set up in such a way. Well, one step back, so we have a lot of Maven configuration there and a lot of automated, a lot of static analysis tool configured there. But we also have a lot of other repositories. We have over 70 different repositories. But the idea is that all these repositories are using the Picnic Java support modules as a parent. And that means that if we define a Maven plugin or we provide a module in the Picnic Java support modules, all the other repositories get this configuration out of the box, or this new module out of the box. So they, again, don't need to reinvent the wheel, and they can focus on writing actual business logic.
And we see it often that it's really helpful to be so homogeneous in your setup, where you just have a defined way that is preferred for all the teams. And if you want to diverge from that path, you suddenly have to do everything yourself. You have to integrate with your authentication and your logging and your metrics and all the non-functionals. It makes it the easiest to just conform and stay up to date as well, if everything is using that same parent.
Exactly. I think it's also nice what the Moderne platform really focuses on is, well, what we have internally is that we use a Google Java formatter, so we have a fairly strict way of formatting our code. But you also mentioned that OpenRewrite really takes into account how your code is formatted, such that accepting the changes is a lot easier, because it's in the style that you would like to see as a developer.
Yep. Yeah, we've had some fun discussions about this in the past, where I think the tooling you have with ErrorProne support is kind of assuming that you have a formatter, and then it works really well. Whereas we try to really adapt to whatever style that you are in practice using. So if you're maybe not as consistent, maybe your company is made up of multiple companies that have joined, each with their own history and preferences taken in, then the recipes we run are able to take that into account. And yeah, we can do the same now with the rules that you have defined as well. So that's pretty neat.
Exactly. We will get to that and be able to show that. Yeah. So as a Java platform team, we try to help throughout the whole developer workflow. So from a developer starting to write some code using static analysis tools to make sure the code is correct, up until the point where you have to deploy and monitor your code. So as a Java platform team, we are present in all these during the whole workflow. And this slide just gives you an idea of all the tools that we are supporting.
Mm-hmm. And then yeah, it's nice to see OpenRewrite and your logo for ErrorProne support right next to each other there.
Exactly. So onto an interesting case, because about 9 years ago, Picnic started as a company, and well, when we started writing our code, we started with using TestNG as a testing framework. But yeah, over time, it became clear that JUnit was actually the better, newer, more innovative testing framework. So we decided, okay, we want to start migrating all our TestNG code. Well, at this point in time, we already had 10,000, maybe 100,000 of tests. So this effort would be quite enormous if we would have to do this manually. Yeah, I have some code examples to give you an idea of how the TestNG to JUnit migration looks like, because luckily not everyone knows TestNG. Well, the idea is that the part in red is testng and the green part is JUnit. So I can take my nice pointer. And the idea is that testng has a class level annotation test, which means that all public methods in this class are actually tests. Well, in JUnit we don't have this, so we need to annotate every public method with @test, and it doesn't need to be public anymore, so we can simply drop it. And the same holds for the fact that we can drop this test prefix, and there's also a nice OpenRewrite recipe for this.
Yep, looks very familiar.
And so that holds for a large part of the migration. And the other thing is that you have to migrate your data providers to method sources, to parameterized test. And I would say that these changes are fairly simple because we have to swap some annotations, and there are some more examples, but this holds for about 90% of the migration. So again, doing this manually would be very labor intensive. It's very easy to make mistakes and would just cost a lot of time. So what we saw within Picnic is that we wanted to do this migration. We had no automation in place. So what actually happened is that no one was really doing the migration. Also because, let's say you're working in a team, you have a repository, there are 10,000 of these tests. And what you could do is go to your product owner and say, hey, I have around 10,000 of these tests and I want to migrate them all. So I will take a break of 2 weeks. I will do the full migration. I will not be able to write any business logic. And then at least the migration is done. Well, at that point in time, do you want to add something?
No, okay.
So at that point in time, if you would go to your product owner would think you're actually crazy because no one says, hey, I take 2 weeks of break to do the full migration manually. Simply, there's no time to do this.
And that's even if you find someone who actually wants to do that work. It's a very easy job to do if you do that from 9 to 5 for 2 weeks, but I'd be pulling my hair out if I have to do that for more than an hour. So
exactly, doing all the rebasing, making sure that everyone does the reviews. This is just not an okay process. Well, that's where automation tool come into play. So we started out with creating a lot of Refaster rules. We will dive into that in a second. But we use that to migrate the testng assertions to JUnit, which already, I'm saying that wrong. We use that to do the testng assertions to use assert_j, because we thought that was a nicer library for the assertions. And then we used ErrorProne to do the rest of the automation there, to swap out the annotations.
Very neat. And I've already, of course, seen the code that you use to do these migrations, and you, of course, go from testng to assert_j. But just last week, we had a friend of mine show up in the open source Slack. He was going to do a workshop at JavaLand, where he's going to collaboratively with the participants help folks migrate from testng to JUnit. So, as an intermediate step, take those same before and after scenarios that you've already defined, and help folks to migrate to JUnit if that is to your taste. So, pretty neat stuff to see things be applicable in multiple ways, just through these collaborations.
And the beautiful thing of automation is that it was fairly easy to do this, because we just could provide, as a Java platform team, we provided a script to all the other teams saying, hey, please perform this. And then you get all the changes, make sure to review them, open a pull request, and you're done. So that was really easy to do. And also our code was very consistent, which allowed it to be a lot easier to actually perform this migration.
And another thing I like about these, having an automation do that migration, is that it is very prone to conflicts. So if you start a PR which does this migration manually, and your colleagues are simultaneously working on something else, you are guaranteed almost to have conflicts with this type of work. Whereas if it's just an automation, you just run it again. You just merge his work first, automate the migration again, and it's just so much easier to do this in a conflict-free way of working.
Exactly. This saved so many hours. It's insane. Yeah, so now we're free of testing G-code, which is a very good thing. Now a bit more context on this picnic Java support modules and what we have in this repository, and by extension what all the other repositories get as a result of that. So we have a very big Maven parent POM XML where we have a lot of plugins defined, formatting plugin, license plugins, dependency analysis plugins, Maven enforcer plugin. Like there are many examples. And we also have a big dependency management section where we maintain the core 200 of the core dependencies of that we use within Picnic. So think about Spring, Reactor, Mongo, Postgres, Jackson, Guava, all these kinds of examples. And on top of that, we provide the configuration for a lot of static analysis tools. So for example, for checkstyle, for OpenRewrite, for ErrorProne, and many more. I see you're switching tabs again, I think, because your screen is, your camera is black. Yeah, the idea is that every repository has to define a small piece of XML in their parent POM, in their root POM XML. And the idea is that they can add the example I showed on the slide. They only have to define the tech picnic shared parent as their parent, and then they get all of this out of the box. And I see Tim is back.
Yep, minor technical issues. We'll work with the platform that we have. We'll see.
Yeah, so a brief example of some of the modules that we provide as a Java platform team. We have a logging support, exception support, and the idea is that, for example, for logging, because every application is doing its logging in the exact same way, it's a lot easier to go over all the logs that all the services produce. And if there's an issue, you can fairly quickly go through the logs and try to pinpoint what is actually, which service is misbehaving, or what is where the bug is.
Yeah, that's also nice to only configure that once and not have that in the 70 different repositories that you have in various copies that are copies of copies of copies.
Exactly. So recently I had to work on a different project where I had to start with a greenfield application, and here I could actually be on the other side. So not as a Java platform engineer, but as someone who was working in the product team. I could create a simple application where I got a few of these main technologies, like what you can see here, Mongo, RabbitMQ. I wanted to have a Webflux app. I wanted to have some security, and with only defining a few of these config classes, I was simply able to get a lot of these features and configuration out of the box. So without having to spend many days on setting up the RabbitMQ and Mongo things, I was just able to spin up this application within a day, actually.
And that's the real value of having the tools to help you standardize, that you're able to go a lot quicker, and you don't need as much boilerplate when you just want to stand up something new, try it out, and if it works, it works, and if not, you haven't had to build a lot. You can do experiments quite cheaply. So.
Exactly. So per release of these picnic shared, there's a question. How do you version that parent? Do you do finishes? Good question. So yeah, what we do is we do a monthly release of the Picnic Java support modules. This question perfectly coincides with the actual content we're going to talk about, so this is nice. But we do a major release for every for every month we do a new major release. But if there are problems like patch vulnerabilities, then indeed we do patch releases. Depending or minor releases, depends a bit on what the actual problem is. But yeah, we just made the decision to do a major release every month, and if there are patches, we do that as fast as possible. And we use if we do a new release, then automatically pull requests get created in all the different repositories. So without having to spend time on that, all the repositories see, okay, there's a new version. What's happening here? Does it look good? Do we need to do anything? And then they can simply merge it.
Yeah, really neat. Yeah, with our customers, we see a mix of approaches. This is what we would call a push model, where you actually incentivize taking up that new change by sending out that pull request towards the teams. Other organizations which are maybe not as homogeneous, they use maybe more a pull model, where it's once the teams are ready, they can update through the recipes by requesting that the pull request is opened either through a service or just by contacting a team. So we see both flows, and personally, I like the push model. It's much harder to forget to upgrade, and I think this really helps you to keep those teams up to date.
I'm interested in the pull model because what we try to aim for is we say, okay, we support 2 major versions back to allow to incentivize people to be as up to date as possible. Because also otherwise we would need to memorize all the issues that can occur, and it would become way too hard to do all these to know all these things. So for a pull model, I can imagine that at some point you will run into this issue where someone is like 4 or 5 versions back and then wants to update like a few versions in one go.
Yeah, we see that with for instance this afternoon we had a case where they don't have one tech stack, they have 3 different tech stacks. One is like 15 years ago until 10 years ago, and then the next block of 5 years is a different tech stack, and then the last 5 years they've moved on to the latest framework that they want to be using. And you can't simply pull folks from framework 1 to not version 2 but framework 2 and framework 3 as easily, and then it becomes pull, and sometimes it's pulling a dead horse. Other times it's more easy when you're already near the target version. But it's always a fun dynamic, and also what works well for what size company as well. So I think you have the sweet spot of 150 developers who you probably also know by name, and helps smoothing things over.
And also to make sure that the upgrades go as smooth as possible, what we try to do is we perform the upgrade. So we start a validation process, we release an alpha snapshot, then we try to perform the actual upgrade for all the different repositories. So we open pull request where we actually upgrade the version, make sure that there's a successful build. Such that the developers don't need to go through all these hoops of doing the upgrade. So what we do, for example, is we have this setup where we then trigger all the different builds. I'll get to the question in a sec. And then we try to see, hey, is the build failing? Okay, why is it failing? Make sure that it actually gets to a green state, because then we know, did we do something wrong in the upgrade, or is it actually safe to continue with the rollout? And once all the repositories are green, then we actually do the release. So the developers only need to review the changes that we made for them. And here again, automation is really key, because otherwise we're with a relatively small team. It would simply not be doable. It would not scale, because now we already have over 70 different repositories. This will only become bigger and bigger.
And it really helps to know that what you're sending out is already validated in this sense.
Exactly. I have a nice example on the next slide, but I saw the question of Jonathan. I'm not sure where I can.
Oh yeah, that's Jonathan chimed in with some insight from different organizations, different flows, that indeed it also depends on the level of autonomy that teams feel or need to pick up new versions, new frameworks, and new suggestions. Where indeed sometimes there's a culture where it helps to actually give them the option to pull changes in, rather than having them be forced upon them. And it just really depends on what suits your organization and your needs best. And, it's fun to see all different flows adopted across the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can also kind of pull this off within Picnic, because we have this culture where it's like more or less accepted, and they I would say that we try to make them feel part of the process without forcing things upon them that they don't really like, because there will simply we experience pushback for some particular things, like, hey, do we have to write this code like this from now on? And then it's like, oh, I don't like it. And then if we make sure to respond to that quickly and say, okay, well, we hear your concern. Let's dive into if this is actually something that we at Picnic want or that we don't want to do. And we will get to a nice example about that in a bit. So what we did for example, for the release of the Picnic shared modules from 58 to 59, we in the process used a custom OpenRewrite recipe. This is a fairly simple one, but as part of the upgrade for all the repositories, we had to change the dependency. And during the validation process I just explained, we did the upgrade to the alpha snapshot. Then we run the rewrite recipe, we run some other automation tools, and then we make the upgrade as smooth as possible. So really fun to see.
And it's really neat that not everyone knows that you can also build upon the recipes that we provide from OpenRewrite and Moderne. Whereas it is this simple to add your own stamp to integrate something that wasn't there before, and can help you migrate your internal libraries, your internal frameworks, just by starting out with a recipe list, as you can see here, and then growing that maybe to some custom Refaster templates, Refaster rules, and recipes as well.
Exactly. So at Picnic, we are really focused on having a consistent as possible code base, and then try to have as simple code as possible. For example, because it's really, let me rephrase that, because, it's well known that the ratio of the time spent on reading code versus writing is this is insane. Like, we're reading so much more code than actually writing. That we really focus on making the reading part as easy as possible. And a good example of that is, for example, during code reviews. Because what we really try to automate are the simple, the trivial and repetitive discussions that are happening in pull requests. So what you can see is when a colleague of mine reviewed a pull request, there are some simple things of which I'm like, hey, we can also automate this, so that we never have to put this comment on a pull request again. And here are some simple examples, like, hey, please use the immutable list of instead of the collection.empty list. Another one is, hey, test method should not be public. Also a good one. And make sure to add the final keyword. These are some very trivial examples of things we saw happening in pull requests over and over again.
And you don't want to have professionals have a discussion about this where it's agreeable that which one is better, and if not, then you come to some consensus and you pick one, and then automate the heck out of that. And we saw that last week, where we placed such comments in an automated fashion as a code suggestion, so it becomes just a one click to apply these changes, and that's really neat what you can do with automation.
Our stance is that you can have these discussions once, but the idea is that you make sure that you, preferably as a company, or not as a team, but as a company, try to settle on something and have these discussions like company wide, and then make sure that it is enforced over your whole code base. such that so all the violations are automatically fixed, the code base is clean, and that this will simply never occur in your code base again, and people don't need to have this discussion. Yeah, I would say we're going on to the tools, some different tools that we use for this at Picnic. So one of the tools we use is ErrorProne. ErrorProne is an open source static analysis tool for Java only. The idea is that it can not only detect issues in your code base, but can also automatically apply suggested fixes for you. It's a compile time static analysis tool, so it runs as part of your build. And yeah, it's a Google open sourced this tool in 2013, and by now there are over 500 ErrorProne checks provided out of the box. But writing an ErrorProne check can be quite complex. So what they did at Google, they created another tool on top of ErrorProne, and that tool is called Refaster. Refaster is a tool with which you can specify refactoring operations using before and after templates. And the idea is that in the before template, you specify what code you would like to match. And in the after template, you specify to what code you want to rewrite that. Let me give you an example. So we have a string is empty Refaster rule. And in the before template, so here we have the before template annotation. And what we say is that we are looking for, so we are going over all strings in the code base, and we try to match that with the equals operator. So an example is on the left, where we have some arbitrary string field, and there we use equals. But if we apply this Refaster rule on this particular piece of code, then it will automatically get rewritten to the content that is defined in the after template, namely the .isEmpty operator. So this is what will happen if we apply this Refaster rule. But the cool thing about this Refaster rule is that it is really easy to specify a refactoring operation like this. The idea is that every Java developer can specify refactorings like this.
And if it's not already clear, it's you're not just you're matching anything that is of the type string. So it could be a field, it could be a literal, it could be a method invocation, it could be something within parentheses that results into a string, and it will all just match. And if you call equals with two empty quotes on it, it will get converted into that isEmpty method invocation.
Good addition.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example of how we achieve a high level of consistency in our code base. And let's start with a simple example. So what we see here is that there are three different ways of writing the exact same code. So we have a null equals object, we have an object dot is null with an object, and in the after template we see object equals null. So three ways of specifying one and the same thing. But if we apply this on a code base, what will happen is that it will find all these occurrences that you see here at the top, so from the before template, and it will automatically rewrite that to the content that is specified in the after template. Which means that your code base gets a lot more consistent. Well, again, this is only one simple Refaster rule, but you can imagine that if you have many of those rules, then your code base gets a lot more consistent.
And the moment that these get applied for Refaster and ErrorProne is, like you said, at compile time. So while you're developing the code, you see these indeed red squiggly lines or something similar pop up in your IDE if you're not using the agreed upon template.
Yeah, indeed. So I have another example of some things that we try to rewrite. So what you see here on the left is that there are 8 different ways of writing, of checking whether something is empty, whether a collection is empty, I must say. Well, with one simple Refaster rule, you can actually solve this problem and rewrite it to use only one simple operator, namely the .isEmpty operator. This is a nice example of where, instead of having 8 different ways, you have only one operator to check something like this. And this makes your code base a lot more consistent.
Yeah, it's really helpful then if you switch between different projects, that you don't have to learn whatever the conventions are within that one project, because it's standardized across the entire organization.
Exactly, it makes it a lot easier to again read and understand the code of someone or from a different team. And also, if you indeed switch between teams, you don't need to relearn everything or like the common coding guidelines of that specific team. And then an interesting, this was brought up in the question before. How do we build consensus within Picnic? Because, well, we have around 900 Refaster rules, and if we would simply, after we wrote all these rules, we had to roll them out. And if we would simply roll out all these 900 Refaster rules on every code base, open pull requests for them, and say, hey, this is now how you have to write your code, as like this is now the big Picnic book of how you need to write your code, then quite some developers would have said, well, I'm not accepting this, I will not do the upgrade, because you cannot tell me like that how you want me to write my code. So we needed to think about, hey, how can we actually get the developers on board with all the changes that we are making? And well, we started rolling out a lot of these. We started to validate the rules in code bases from other teams. So we opened the pull request, said, hey, we have some changes coming up. We want to have your opinion on whether you like this or not. Do you think these code improvements are actually correct or not? Do you like them? So the developers liked that approach because their opinion was also important, and we weren't forcing anything upon them. But sometimes there was some pushback, and then from different teams we got the question like, hey, I'm not totally agreeing with what you're doing here. Should we actually do this? Well, at that point we used Slack, a simple Slack poll, as you can see here on the screen, and then we said, okay, we want to make this consistent across the code base. We want to automatically fix that for you, but we need your input on this, because we want to know if we're actually doing the right thing, and if you think that this actually should be applied across Picnic. And then we posted a simple Slack thread where they could cast their vote, and this really helped with making them part of the process.
Yeah, it gives everyone the opportunity to be heard and make their case, and from there just have agreed upon thing that you can also point back to if someone new joins and they maybe are wondering, why are we doing it this way? Well, 25 people thought this was the best way to do it. And I know, because we've talked in the past, I know that secretly when you throw out a poll, you have a favorite, and you maybe throw out the poll when you know that you have that you're likely to get consensus in the way that you hope. But the nice thing about process is that it's just you don't know how it's going to pan out, but at least it's going to be consistently applied. So pretty cool.
That's what the feedback was usually. So you either had people that were like, okay, I don't really care if it's like they all look the same. I don't really care which one it will be, as long as it is consistent and enforced. So not like we make a decision, but there's no enforcement, then it will not work. And the other group was usually like, hey, okay, I have a strong preference, so I will cast my vote. But when reaching consensus, it was usually fine.
Yeah, pretty good.
So then on to OpenRewrite. Well, I can skip the explanation of what OpenRewrite is, but unless you want to say something, I don't know.
No, I think it should be well known for our audience here.
Well, I want to highlight a particular interesting recipe that we heavily used, because we had to perform this migration, and as a Java platform team, we try to see how can we make sure that this migration doesn't take a lot of time from the teams, because if we would say, hey, all the teams need to prioritize on their roadmap for the first quarter, that they need to spend time on this, they need to read the whole migration guide. Well, you know how long that migration guide is. That's simply not nice to go over. And the idea was that if we, as a team, pick up this migration, we can really go in depth. We get all the knowledge on like what are all the required things for the migration, and then we can really help all the teams out by performing the migration for them. So that was the plan, and then we of course started to think, hey, we are with 5 people in the Java platform team. We have 3 million lines of Java code, and we need to do this migration as fast as possible. Well, one of the tools that we use for that is of course OpenRewrite. Well, I posted a screenshot to give you an idea of how many recipes there are in this particular Spring Boot 3 migration recipe. But what we started doing is
we recently added internally we have a new visualization which actually shows how deep that tree is, because every line item you see on the right is again a tree of recipes that gets executed. And in total, I think we're running 1,400 recipes when you migrate to the latest version of Spring Boot and Java 21. And all of that just conveniently wrapped in this one recipe that you can run. So you're getting a lot, but you don't even know. So pretty cool.
That's a nice number. So yeah, we could really rely on this for obviously the largest part of the migration. And by using this, we were actually able to do the migration of 3 million lines of code in 70 different repositories with a team of 5 different people. And we could, with of course preparation, we could do this migration in a few weeks' time. So that was quite a nice achievement.
Yeah, pretty good. And I saw some issues that you reported as well, and small improvements that flowed out of this that we can then take into the next folks that maybe still need to migrate, and it's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, we also indeed added some recipes for like some of the recipes to help out with some of the picnic specific things that we had to migrate, which because they were picnic specific, they weren't part of the migration, so we could simply extend like the rewrite .yaml, like the, what do you call it?
Yep, the decorative recipe files that we have. Yep.
Exactly, and that's what we use to perform the migration. So really powerful.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So as you might have guessed, because of this setup, we open sourced all the Refaster rules that we had. We started with building them internally, and at some point it was like, hey, we have so many extensions to ErrorProne, so many Refaster rules internally, which we think are of value, and we actually want to share them with the rest of the community. And then a little over a year ago, we actually open sourced this repository, and there are over 900 Refaster rules and 40 ErrorProne bug checks in there. And I see the link was shown as well. Nice. Not sure if I want to say anything more about that.
Yeah, that's and then comes the fun bit for our viewers here is that we've met up at a lot of conferences, and you have a lot of fun, and then you think, well, we should really collaborate, because I have people in my talks asking about ErrorProne, you have people in your talks asking about OpenRewrite, and they think that we're competing, but really it's complementary. And so what we've done on our end, and our users probably know, but maybe not everyone, is that we've integrated support for those ErrorProne Refaster rules that you've seen in such a way that you can now also run them through OpenRewrite, and even run them through the Moderne platform. So all those rules that Picnic has internally to make it sure that their code is consistent, you can now run all of them as well. So we're able to get you from TestNG to AssertJ through the Refaster rules that have been contributed to ErrorProne support. And we do coordinated releases. I think last week, just before the weekend, we started to plan a new release where we added support for 80 more rules. And then over the weekend, you guys made sure that there was a release to pick up this morning, which is then applied and now available for folks to use. So really, really cool collaboration there.
Yeah, it was really I couldn't imagine a year ago when we open sourced this that these kind of beautiful things would come out of it, and that you actually managed to build this integration fairly quickly, and we can now even make a demonstration of this. It's yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think first we can go to a demo.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Let's see if my prepared thing is still there.
You can maybe zoom in just a bit, and then
yes, good idea. Like this, yeah.
Yep. So folks are now. Yep. Go ahead. We're looking at the Moderne platform, and go to browse to the Picnic ErrorProne support Refaster rules converted into OpenRewrite recipes.
Exactly.
It's a mouthful,
so we have a,
but it works.
We have a special tab here, the tag one, and then we can go to Picnic, and here we have the ErrorProne, and here it starts with there are now 415 recipes supported, so that's nice. And here we have a list of all the supported Refaster rules as recipes. Yeah, and the cool thing is I tried to play with this quite a bit after this was integrated. But yeah, let me just show you a bit of what we now have. So, for example, we have quite some Refaster rules around time, Java util time, and if we can see the details, we can see that there are quite some. So, running this recipe will run all these examples, and it's quite okay. This is quite a big list. Maybe I should click 1, 2. Yeah, and the cool thing is that you can see the code of the Refaster template, and we can simply, with a few clicks, run these recipes on some of the repositories. Now I already prepared that, so maybe I can just switch to the tab. But what I did was, so the Apache, how do you call this? The Apache organization in the platform has around 1,000. Let me check.
Over 1,000 repositories, and you can see here that 1,048.
So I read this 2 hours ago, and there were over almost 1,000 changes. So what we can see, we can just inspect the result here. As you can see, it ran over all these repositories, and let's check out, for example, the Apache Hive repository, where we have 7 different changes, and we can now simply view the result as diff, and we can inspect what is the result of these changes. And
the nice thing here is you have 7 changes across 21,000 files, and you didn't have to know where to look. We just found all the cases where we thought, well, out of the 21,000 files, let's change these 7 instances to actually better conform to the standards that you'd hope to see.
So less Guava, having less negations, for example, to make it a bit simpler to read.
You're being encouraged to change 997 repos at the end of this call.
Well, that's a nice bridge to the LinkedIn post you made this last week, because when I was trying to apply, I think this exact Refaster, these Refaster rules on Microsoft organization, the next thing happened. So you tagged me in this message where you showed that the platform itself got into a crash loop back off. That's perfect. If the platform is ready, we can of course retry this, but I'm not sure if that's if that is okay.
We should be handling it better, I think. Yeah.
Better.
Let's do that for the next call.
Sounds like a good idea. But yeah, now we can show the actual power, of course, because well, we have these changes. I checked them before. I think they're good to go. So well, to make the demo full circle, we are now going to commit this result. So what we're going to say here is that we are going to create a pull request from a fork. Make the Refaster rules. Well, branch name is fine for now. Refactor Refaster related to expressions dealing with primitives.
Yeah, so that's all the defaults based on the recipe that we have selected. So you don't have to fill it out. We'll pick the selection in gray there. And then it should all work if you just press the results.
Okay, well, there we go. I hope the demo gods are with us.
So of course, what we do in the background now is that you saw a preview of the code change. And what we now have to do is we call out to GitHub to fork the Apache Hive project with its 21,000 files to your personal GitHub account at a key on GitHub. And from there, we're going to start a branch containing just these fixes. And then we're going to open a pull request that folks can, from the Apache Hive project, review and adopt. And in this way, get your changes going. So I found this to be a really fun way to contribute to open source software, because you can just pick and choose from the candy store, run a recipe, see the change. And if it looks good and manageable for an open source project to actually adopt, then this is a great way to get started that way.
Let's see if it works.
There is some timing involved here, because we know that GitHub doesn't have the best feedback mechanism when you create a fork for the first time. Especially if it's a large project, it can take some time. And I think that's the spinner we're waiting for now. But we'll keep trying, and then eventually you'll see the pull request.
Exactly. It was fun to also start applying some of the rules on the OpenRewrite repository itself.
Yep. We've been on the receiving end of your pull requests, just getting these improvements in, and it's really neat to see how we now have 400 more recipes with fixes we can run on our own code as well, and make it part of the standardized checks that we do for every pull request going forward. So pretty neat. I'm in parallel looking if I can see your fork already created on GitHub. So that is up. So that part is working. And branch is not yet there. So that is going to take a bit longer. But yeah, well, we could also move. Sorry? We could also move like folks know that we can create a pull request. We already have the fork. I think the timeout is just going to take a bit longer.
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, but really cool to see. We went over the unintended stress test. We had a slide prepared for that to go over it. But yeah, I would say this is the last slide that we have prepared, because well, in May 13th we are going to host a workshop together.
Yeah. So on exactly this, the integration of OpenRewrite and Refaster, using both individually and combined to write recipes, to transform your code, running existing recipes, but also creating new ones, and maybe help folks to contribute to both our projects and see them grow from there, and make them able to do their own migrations going forward. So it's really neat. And of course, now we're no longer competing for slots at conferences on a similar topic. We're actually able to be sure that we see each other at the conference and do it that way. So really fun to have that collaboration going forward. So I think that's all we have to cover for this week. Next week, we're going to have a presentation by two colleagues of mine, Kyle and Scott, on running code mods at scale. So you've seen us do a lot of code changes in the Java space, but we similarly have a lot that you can do for JavaScript and TypeScript projects as well. And they're going to go over that next week on March 20th, 8 o'clock in Europe and 3 p.m. in the east coast of the US. Well, I'll be on a beach somewhere in Mexico. I'm taking off for a bit, so be good. Looking forward to that, and looking forward to listening in to this one from the beach somewhere. So that's it for this week. Thanks a lot, Rick, for joining in and sharing all that you've done and making the work you've put into ErrorProne support part of the things that both can run through OpenRewrite, and we're doing that as well. So yeah, always good seeing you.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, cheers. And then, yeah, hope to see you all soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.